The alien vessel drifted in the cold void, its scanners pulsing as they bathed. The human warship in waves of probing energy. The crew of the Vurian scout ship had been monitoring the humans for decades, watching their chaotic wars, their reckless expansion, their stubborn refusal to submit to the galactic order. They had seen the primitive weapons humans once wielded: ballistic projectiles, crude energy beams, and nuclear warheads that barely scratched the surface of what true galactic powers could command. They had always dismissed humanity as a savage species, too emotional and too impulsive to ever become a real threat. But as their scanners returned data from the human warship before them, terror gripped the Vurian crew. High Captain, one of the bridge officers, choked his crest of spines, flattening in alarm. "You need to see this." High Captain Zorth stepped forward, his yellow eyes narrowing as he examined the results. What he saw sent a chill through his bones. The human ship designation, Indomitable, was unlike anything they had encountered before. It wasn't just a vessel, it was a fortress, a weaponized monstrosity that defied every known principle of war. Its hull wasn't made of standard metals, but a composite layer with exotic materials designed to absorb and dissipate energy attacks. The armor was thick, absurdly so, suggesting the humans had built it to withstand a siege of unimaginable proportions. And the weapon, Zor's throat tightened as he read through the analysis. The Indomitable bristled with a terrifying array of weaponry: railguns capable of firing projectiles at relativistic speed, plasma lances that could shear through the strongest warship hulls in seconds. And then there were the missiles, thousands of them, each equipped with warheads that didn't merely explode, but warped space itself, collapsing shields and armor as if they were paper. But that wasn't the worst part now. The true horror was in the ship's secondary systems. The humans had created weapons that weren't just meant to destroy ships, but to hunt the crews inside them. Boarding drones outfitted with monomolecular blades and viral hacking protocols, nanite swarms designed to dissolve flesh and metal alike, and worst of all, something called the Exot Troopers, cybernetic monstrosities engineered from fallen human soldiers, their bodies augmented with enough firepower to level entire cities. The Vurian officer turned his skin pale. This isn't a warship, High Captain, it's a nightmare given form. Zorth couldn't look away. The humans had always fought like cornered beasts, using whatever means necessary to survive. They had no limits, no restraint, and now they had built a war machine that reflected that monstrous nature. And full of sickening realization hit him. The Galactic Union had long debated whether to bring humanity into the fold or eradicate them before they became a true problem. Many had dismissed them as unworthy of attention. That was a mistake. The humans had been preparing for war, and now they were ready. Zorth swallowed hard and issued a single command to his crew: cut the scanners, power down all weapons, send a message to the home world. What should we say? The officer asked. Zorth exhaled shakily. Tell them we must never provoke the human. Silence fell over the bridge of the Vurian scout ship as High Captain Zor stared at the monstrosity before them. The Indomitable hung in the void, utterly still, as if it were waiting, watching his crew obeyed his command without question, shutting down their weapons and ceasing all scans. But it was too late. The human warship had noticed them. A ripple of energy shimmered across its hull, and before Zorth could react, a transmission cut through their calories. The voice that spoke was cold, mechanical, yet unmistakably human. Unidentified vessel, you have been scanning a Terran warship state. Your purpose? Immediately the bridge crew tensed. Vurian ships were equipped with stealth fields designed to mask their presence. No species had ever detected them before, but the humans had, and they weren't pleased. Zor's mind raced. If they responded incorrectly, this thing would obliterate them in an instant. He had no doubt about that now. He took a deep breath, forcing his spines to lie flat, and motioned to his communications officer: open a channel. Do not under any circumstances show hostility. A click echoed as the channel opened and Zorth spoke. This is High Captain Zor of the Royan Exploration Fleet. We mean no harm. We were merely observing. A long pause, then the voice returned. Observing? How the tone was laced with something unfamiliar. Mockery. Let me guess, you thought we wouldn't notice, thought your fancy cloaking tech made you invisible. Zvovi felt a pit form in his stomach. The humans had seen right through them. That was not our intention. He lied smoothly. We have been monitoring many Civilizations across the sector yours is simply of interest too. Us another silence, then something changed on their sensors. The Indomitable was powering up, its engines flared with unnatural intensity, its weapon systems cycling through readiness checks, a targeting system locked onto their vessel, not one, but dozens. The Vurian ship was suddenly bathed in overlapping firing solutions, each one predicting their every possible movement. If the humans decided to fire, there would be no escape. Then the voice returned, I suggest you pick another civilization to spy on. A warning, but beneath it an unspoken threat. Zorth clenched his jaw. He had underestimated the humans. The entire Galactic Union had these creatures weren't just another fledgling race climbing the ladder of progress. They were already at the top, and they were letting him go. Understood, Zorth said carefully. We will depart. Immediately a long pause, then at last the human's voice softened just slightly. Good choice, now run along, little scout, and next time remember who owns this sector. The transmission cut. Zorth wasted no time. Get us out of here now. The Vurian ship spun away, activating its jump drive, vanishing into the void as the stars streaked past them. Zorth allowed himself a slow, shuddering breath. Humanity wasn't just dangerous. They were something else entirely, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Vurian scout ship emerged from the jump, light years away from the terrifying presence of the Indomitable. High Captain Zor had expected to feel relief upon their escape, but the sensation never came. Instead, a sickening weight settled in his chest. His claws drummed against the armrest of his command chair as he turned to his communications officer. Send an encrypted transmission to High Command. They must hear of this immediately. The officer hesitated. Captain, what do we tell them? Zorth exhaled slowly. The truth. The humans are not what we thought they were. The transmission took only moments to encode and send, and then all they could do was wait. The bridge crew remained tense, their eyes flickering toward the sensor readouts every few minutes, as if expecting the Indomitable to somehow appear here behind them. Zorth couldn't blame them. It was supposed to be a simple reconnaissance mission. The Galactic Union had dismissed humanity as reevaluated. Zor felt his blood turn cold. The War Council, only existential threats were brought before the War Council. The last time they had convened in full force was during the rise of a lower tier civilization, one with potential, but ultimately insignificant. Aggressive, yes, dangerous perhaps, but nothing that the greater empires couldn't handle if the need ever arose. They had been wrong, horribly wrong. Minutes stretched into hours before the reply from High Command arrived. When it did, Zorth almost wished it hadn't. The message was direct. You are ordered to report to the War Council. Immediately cease all further missions. The humans must be UAR hive, a parasitic species that had consumed entire star systems before being purged from a galaxy, and now humanity was being placed in the same category. Zorth turned to his crew. Prepare for another jump. We return home at once. As the ship powered up, he allowed himself one final glance at the void beyond the viewport. For centuries, the Radhans had believed themselves masters of strategy, warriors of supreme intelligence, but for the first time in his life, Zorth felt like a prey animal, and he knew with absolute certainty that humanity had become the apex predator of the galaxy. The worst part, they hadn't even begun to show their true strength yet. The Vurian capital world Zal, Torath, gleamed beneath the twin suns as High Captain Zor's scout ship descended towards the military command complex. Towering spires of obsidian and steel loomed over the landing bay there. Surfaces adorned with the banners of the War Council, a symbol of order, strategy, and absolute power. Normally, such an audience would be granted only to the highest-ranking warlords of the Royan Dominion. The fact that he, a mere scout commander, had been summoned to stand before them meant only one thing: failure. The War Council was afraid. Zorth stepped off his ship, his boots clicking against the polished onyx floor. He marched through the corridor, flanked by honor guards, until he reached the towering doors of the council chamber. As they swung open, he was greeted by the sight of the 13 warlords who governed the Dominion. At the center of the chamber sat Grand Warlord Torval, his battle-scarred face carved from centuries of conflict, his piercing golden eyes locked on his Zorth, and the room fell silent. You have seen something, Torval said, his voice a low growl. Something that has shaken even you. Zorth stepped forward, his claws clenched behind his back to steady himself. I have Grand Warlord, and I bring Grave news, he activated a hollow projector displaying the terrifying scans of the INDOM idable as the data scrolled across the council's vision. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. This is a human warship, Zorth said, a single vessel, and yet it possesses armor that absorbs energy attacks, kinetic weaponry capable of bypassing standard shielding, and boarding technology that eliminates enemy crews before a ship is even destroyed. A murmur of disbelief ran through the council. Torval leaned forward. You suggest that a single human warship rivals one of our own dreadnoughts? Zorth met his gaze. No, Grand Warlord, I suggest that it surpasses them. The silence was deafening. Finally, Warlord Vayer, known for his brutal campaigns against lesser species, scoffed. Absurd. Humanity is young. Their technology is crude. Even if they have improved, they lack the strategy to pose a true threat. Zorth turned his gaze toward him. Then tell me, Warlord, how did they detect us through our stealth fields? How did they lock weapons on our vessel before we even realized they were watching? Vayer faltered. Zorth continued, they did not fire upon us. They allowed us to leave. And do you know what that tells me? Tal's expression darkened. That they are not simply warlike savages. Zorth nodded. Yes, the humans are not just strong, they are confident. They knew they could destroy us, yet chose not to. That restraint is what makes them terrifying, because it means they are waiting for something, preparing for something. A long silence stretched across the chamber. Then, for the first time in Vurian history, the War Council session ended without an immediate resolution. There were no orders to mobilize fleets, no calls for war, because for the first time the Dominion had encountered an enemy it did not know how to defeat. And worse still, the humans already knew. The War Council chambers emptied slowly, but the unease lingered like the scent of blood. After battle, High Captain Zalvior remained standing before the massive war table, his claws resting against the cool surface. Grand Warlord Torval had not spoken since the discussion ended, his golden eyes fixed on the glowing hologram of the Indomitable. Finally, he exhaled through flared nostrils. You believe they're preparing for war? Zorth straightened. I believe they are preparing for something far worse. Coral's gaze shifted sharp as a blade. Explain. Zor stepped forward, tapping a command into the projector. The image shifted, displaying the Indomitable's power core, the eerie fluctuations of its energy output resembling something unnatural. This ship was not just built for war, Zorth said carefully. It was built for survival. The armor plating suggests they expect overwhelming firepower to be used against them. The redundant power systems, the sheer volume of kinetic weapons, every design choice points to one terrifying possibility. Tal's voice lowered. They are preparing to fight an enemy greater than us. Zorth nodded slowly. Yes, and whatever that enemy is, the humans are designing their ships to withstand its. Val remained silent, his expression unreadable. Then, after a long moment, he turned to the warlords still present. Begin deep, intelligent sweeps of all human territories. I want every intercepted transmission, every military movement analyzed. He fixed Zorth with a piercing look. And you, I am assigning you a new task. Zor's spine stiffened. Whatever is required. Grand Warlord Tval leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. I need you to find out what they are afraid of deep within human-controlled space aboard the Indomitable. Captain Elias Grant stood in his command chamber, watching the sensor logs from their recent encounter with the Royan scout ship. His officers had been uneasy, wondering why they had let the alien vessel go. Grant knew why. He folded his arms as he studied the data, eyes narrowing on the final energy scan of the Royan ship before its retreat. They're starting to ask questions, his first officer murmured. Grant nodded. Let them. The officer hesitated. Do you think they suspect? Grant let out a slow breath, glancing at the sealed classified reports on his screen, the ones detailing the real threat, the ones that had been hidden from the rest of the galaxy for centuries. He looked back at the viewport, staring into the endless void. They'll find out soon enough. Zorth sat alone in his personal chamber aboard the Vurian Dread, sovereign wrath staring at the encrypted data feeds scrolling before him. The War Council had given him full access to all intelligence reports on humanity, and what he saw unsettled him. More than anything in his long military career, the humans were hiding something. Over the past 50 years, their technological progress had accelerated at an unnatural rate. They had gone from crude planetary defenses to warships capable of outmaneuvering the best. The Galactic Union had to offer. Their ships were designed for endurance there. Weapons refined for maximum lethality, but none of that was what disturbed him. Most know the real anomaly was the lack of outward expansion. Every major space fair race followed the same pattern: expand, claim new territory, secure resources, and then push outward again. It was the nature of all species that sought dominance over the stars, but the humans. They weren't expanding. Their fleet numbers were increasing at an alarming rate, yet their borders remained almost unchanged. They fortified their colonies, built orbital defenses, created fleet yards capable of turning out warships at a pace that defied known logistics, but they did not invade, they did not conquer. They were waiting. Zorth tapped his claws against the console. If the humans were preparing for war, it should be against the Rians or one of the other dominant species of the Galactic Union. But if they had no interest in attacking their neighbors, then who? His console pinged a classified transmission from the RON intelligence network. Zorth frowned and opened the file. A moment later, his blood ran cold. It was a deep space scan taken in a sector far beyond human-controlled space, a region that had been marked as uninhabited for millennia, but it was no longer empty. The images showed wreckage, not human, not Vurian, not of any known species. Gigantic hull fragments, the remains of ships larger than anything recorded in history. Their design was completely alien, angular, twisted with strange patterns of damage that suggested their destruction was not from conventional weaponry. Something had torn these ships apart, and that was not the most disturbing part. Among the wreckage, faint energy signatures flickered, active signals weak but unmistakable. Whatever had destroyed those ships was still out there, and the humans already knew. Zorth clenched his fists. The Indomitable wasn't built for war against the Galactic Union. It was built to fight them, and for the first time he understood why the humans had let him go. It wasn't arrogance, it wasn't intimidation, it was a warning. The question now was, had the warning come too late? Zorth felt his stomach tighten as he scrolled through the intelligence files, his claws tapping anxiously against the console. The wreckage field wasn't just a battlefield, it was a graveyard. An ancient war had been fought out there far beyond known space, and something had survived. The humans knew, they had always known. He exhaled slowly, trying to suppress the primal fear curling in his gut. He needed confirmation, he needed proof, and that meant one thing. He had to speak to the humans deep inside human space aboard the warship Indomitable. Captain Elias Grant stood in the dim glow of the bridge, watching the tactical display. His officers moved efficiently around him, monitoring ship diagnostics and sensor feeds, but his attention remained locked on one particular anomaly. A lone Royan vessel had entered human space. No escort, no weapons primed, no signs of aggression. Brave, his first officer muttered, arms crossed, or desperate. Grant smirked, maybe both. He leaned forward, opened a channel. A moment later, the view screen flickered to life, and Zor's hardened visage appeared. His reptilian features were tense, his yellow eyes flickering with something Grant rarely saw in Rodhan's uncertainty. Captain Grant, Zor began, his voice measured. We need to talk. Grant tilted his head. Do we? Zorth didn't flinch. I've seen the wreckage. I know what you're building your ships for. I know there is something out there. His claws tapped against his console. And I know you've been hiding it from the rest of the galaxy. The bridge went silent. Grant let out a slow breath, rubbing his jaw. Then he motioned for his officers to mute outgoing audio while his first officer whispered, "There goes the secret." Grant nodded, eyes narrowing at the screen. The Rodhans were smart, but he hadn't expected them to figure it out this quickly. It complicated things. The truth was, humanity hadn't just found the wreckage, they had encountered the things that caused it, and they knew that sooner or later the war that had destroyed those ancient ships would come knocking at their door. Humanity's rapid militarization, their reluctance to expand, the relentless production of warships like the Indomitable, it was all preparation. They weren't interested in galactic conquest. They weren't trying to dominate the known species. They were trying to survive. Grant unmuted the channel and met Zor's gaze. "You want answers?" he said. "Fine, but once I tell you the truth, there's no going back." Zor's expression didn't waver. "I understand." Grant exhaled. "All right, then let me tell you about the things in the dark." Grant stood in the dim glow of his command chamber, staring at the encrypted files on his terminal. The classified reports contained data that no species outside of humanity had ever seen until now. ZV sat across from him as reptilian. Features impassive, but Grant could see the tension in his posture. The Radhan had spent his life